Good afternoon, everybody. Let's jump right in with a question. How many, raise your hand if you're part of a parallel society today? All right, maybe 5 to 10% of the room. How many of you unsure? Raise your hand if you're unsure, maybe. Okay. How many of you actively want to, like this is something like, yes, I'm ready for a parallel society and I want to be a part of one, I just don't know yet. Raise your hand. All right, so like about a third. So before we dive in, I think I kind of want to start the framing of this conversation because it's at least in my view that we're already live actors in parallel societies today, right? If you're in a meme coin cult, you're leveraging crypto networks for most of your finance. In a favorite Discord or Telegram group, those actions constitute, very parallel structures. That downstream of that, I mean, what's crypto at a $2.5 trillion market cap? Downstream of those capital allocation, those conversations really already do have quite a bit of impact into the world today, the environment today. So I kind of want us to be in that framing. So with that in mind, my name's Angelo, founder of Build Cities. We're a platform for economic development. And what we've basically done to do that is create digital twins or city DAOs of cities around the world that can permissionlessly do capital formation, help people find their kind of digital tribes in their local areas. And we actively work with municipalities around the world to also help them achieve some of their economic development goals. And with that, I'm also joined by Will Wang, RNSID. If you don't have a Plow ID, I'm just going to pull mine out here, fell out, but they're very cool. Plow ID. I'll let Will give a quick intro and overview of the project.
Thanks, Angelo. So, how many of you know what Palau means? Oh, wow. One, yeah. It's about the right statistics. Like about less than 10% even know about, what Palau is. It's actually the world's third smallest country. And it has a population of less than 20,000 people. It's physically located like 4 hours flight from here. So you can reach it from Manila, Hong Kong, or Taipei. And we're a very young country born in 1994. Before that, it was, owned by U.S. and they took from the Japanese, from the World War II. And before that, Japanese took it from Germany. And then before that, German took it from Spain. So we're a recent independent country. So the residency program that we offer, which is the RNS ID program, is a reference to the Estonia e-residency, if you guys have heard about Estonia e-residency. And we are the second country offering this program that allows you to, I think Angelo shows you guys, but I brought a sample over here. It looks like this. So it means you can have a legally recognized ID from another jurisdiction other than your current one, right? So a lot of countries have certain, limitations to your identity, right? Some of the country IDs, they cannot open like US dollar bank accounts. And some countries, like the crypto exchanges, they don't take your ID because, your jurisdiction may not welcome or crypto is illegal, right? And there's countries like India, each time you do a crypto transaction, there's 30% tax, right? And you would have to kind of insert your a la carte number or something, and then they track you. If you lose money, you cannot, deduct your tax. But if you win, you pay 30%. So this is part of the vision of RNS, right? So a lot of people ask, like, are you just making ID or something? The answer is no. Okay. So at RNS, we have a vision to solve two very difficult problems. right? Number one is restriction. And number two is overexposure. So when I say restriction, right, I already mentioned a few, right? Like you don't, like certain IDs, like a Turkey ID, right? You cannot open on interactive brokers, so you don't have access to US stocks. Some country you don't have dollar access. And what I say by overexposure is each time you check into a hotel, they have to make a copy of your passport or your ID or something, right? Everywhere you go. And then if you try to buy something, then, online, you have to insert your physical address. So we're trying to figure out a way of, like what we call as minimum disclosure for constrained use, right? One of the examples would be when you apply for a job, right? You have to show them your resume, and on there, they can see, oh, my last name Wang. This is probably Asian, right? The first name Jennifer. That's probably a female. That is not necessary, right? The only information they need to know is about your expertise, like where you graduated or like your work experience. They don't need to know whether you are a female or a male. They don't need to know your race, right? So that's what we call minimum disclosure for constrained use. I just give one specific example for job application. There's a lot of others. But at RNS, we solve those two problems.
So yeah, when I first kind of started to learn about RNSID and Palau, and the relationship there, it's really kind of the first example I can think of where a country is bridging into these global and potentially one day kind of interplanetary networks, these crypto networks, right? Where you are registering, as I understand, you do register it with a on-chain identifier, through MetaMask or whatnot, the same one that you might be using for buying the latest meme coin or whatever. So there's all these kind of interesting identifiers, on-chain identifiers from a global populace base, and it's almost like this kind of digital net. So you kind of went over some of the benefits for the end user. What is Palau really kind of getting out of this deal? I imagine several things, but I'll let you kind of take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the major industry for Palau is tourism. So during COVID, the country is very it's actually pretty bad situation. So the president traveled to Stanford, where I was an advisor at DTI at that moment, and we were offering some advice, right? Like, how can you boost your economy without tourism? And the island only have 20,000 people, right? So, we tell him that, like, you need to get people first, right? And Palau, is not like other Asian countries like Singapore or Japan. It's not an immigrant country. They don't want a lot of people to compact the island. So what we tell them is to try to reference to the Estonia model, right? You can sign up people remotely, right? They don't even need to be here. They just need an identity from your country, and you already have a pretty like friendly tax situation where, if you don't earn income from Palau, then there's no tax. So even you stay in a country, if your employer is in the US and you are like a digital nomad, you pay zero tax. I mean, like other than if you're a US citizen, but there's 90,000 something if you don't stay in US for I think 330 days. If you're outside of US, you have those threshold of 90 something thousand that you don't need to pay tax for.
Yeah, so sounds like in some largely economic drivers for Palau, which makes a lot of sense. We see this a lot at Build Cities. I mean, you don't even outside of our project, you see these countries and even cities within countries paying to have, in this case, it's usually talent, what we see a lot of. So, right, if you're in some of these networks, a lot of the technologies we're talking about here, they're very frontier technologies, right? They're attracting some of the best and brightest brains in the world. And any kind of forward-looking country, really, they want to be able to leverage that, right? And because downstream of that, it does end up, attracting more economic drivers. In this case, there's a direct business model that's already working, and it's really cool to see. Let's move over to kind of the the theme of this conference for parallel societies. Logos has just done such an incredible job kind of surfacing this theme. And there is, a lot of the tech that Logos is working on, and a lot of people in crypto in general, it's very, very censorship resistant, very privacy preserving, right? We're all kind of, I think, kind of gravitating towards this ideals of a sovereign individual, which I think a lot of us maybe in this room can kind of operate under this assumption that that can be sometimes antithetical to a government's initiatives, right? They want to know probably a lot about you. And so how do you reconcile the sovereignty of an individual? You could take an extreme case, like if Satoshi wanted to be an e-resident but didn't want to give his ID, how do you reconcile those obligations between both parties, between the nation state and kind of, these broader e-residents?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So the approach that Palau take is kind of like a middle approach, right? So what we offer you is not only just a plastic ID, right? We also allow you to mint your ID on Ethereum. And on there, where we deploy a method to only have open claims instead of instead of your exact birthday, right? We have open claims of over 21, true. Over 18, true. Because that's the only information you need to show to external. Like if you go to a bar, they just need to prove you're over 21, right? And they just need to look at those claims, and jurisdiction, like your own jurisdiction, and so what we call is non-PII, right? Non-personal identifiable information, right? It can still to show that is there still open claims like sanction list, sanction check, pass, or PFP false, like those kind of sanctions requirement of a lot of financial institutions. That's why we call it minimum disclosure for constrained use, right? And what we deploy was also a method for institutions to verify whether you are a legal resident of our country with zero knowledge verification, right? So we use all the leaves of your birthday, your name, everything. We calculate a Merkle root, right? And they, without exchanging information with a financial institution or any institution who want to verify, they just need to compare to see, is that part of your program, by comparing the root. And even Palau government or us, we cannot change your information, because once we change that, then your root changes. So that takes the freedom of our ability away, right? So at the end of the day, you are the controller of your own identity, right? You have that root and you have it forever.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of even just process, right? Just over 18, under 18, right? These are kind of simple questions that don't need a technical layer to be able to just implement those kind of wise processes. And again, I think we observe when things are designed right, but again, also back to this point that's hey, there's this brain trust, we have leverage, right? As call them network societies or parallel society, right? There is leverage in those communities that you can kind of bring to the table, I think, when setting up these relationships with the municipality or regulatory, where it's hey, these are non-negotiables, right? And I think it also, there's so much circumstantial pieces, right? There's sometimes there's times to be very collaborative. There's definitely times where you want to kind of circumvent or be as really kind of start leaning forward into some of more of those censorship resistant technologies, depending on the really just depending on the country and jurisdiction. I want to shift over to thinking forward, both for RNSID and maybe the potential domino effect into other countries that kind of want to adopt this. What are some of the top, number 1, 2, 3 considerations for a country that might want to implement a similar program? And on the same vein, is there a criteria that some benefit better than others? I know there's a lot of similar programs in smaller islands in the Caribbean. Can you kind of give us maybe an overview of the broader landscape and what countries should be considering on if they want to implement their own programs?
Yeah. So that depends on your goal, right? If you want to physically move there, I think kind of like number one priority is still the infrastructure, right? How safe is the country? And if there are any educational or like work opportunities, or if you are a nomad still, you need to have certain level of assurance, right? Of the how the cities can supply your basic need, right? And then about like digital programs, we have Palau, we have Estonia, and then there's the good thing about you mentioned about censorship is because there's 200 countries in the world, right? If one country is not like treating you nice, other countries like Thailand, right, offering like digital nomad visa, I think since the June of this year, they actually attract a lot of attention, right? So if your country is not offering like what is needed from the nomad community, then other countries they will, because there's 35 million, if I'm not mistaken, digital nomad in the world, right? And these are like pretty well situated people. I mean, half of them from the U.S. and they earn pretty nice salaries, and this is a great economic driving force, right? They come and then they need to stay in a hotel. They need to do service. They go to restaurant. They are Palau understand this very well because we depend on tourism. So back to your the question about like other countries, there's definitely like Thailand for the digital nomad visa. There's Philippines, you spend $75,000 for you need to buy their the stock from their from their country, and if you're over like 50 years old, you can spend like 20,000. And there's country offering passport programs. In the Caribbean, you have St. Kitts, you have Grenada. These countries lowest possible, you get you spend $100,000 to for donation, and if you spend over 200,000 or 250,000 to buy a property, you're probably eligible as well, which is similar to the Greece and a lot of the Portugal programs in Europe. Those are like for you to really consider to go and live there. But if you're just looking for like a legal ID for KYC, probably we also offered today, for our 5-year Palau ID holder and longer, we actually sign them for their Thailand driver's license, right? They're probably able to get it on Friday. So you have a Thai driver's license. I not in my pocket. It's with Elaine now. But the Thai driver's license has 2 years of validity, right? You can drive it. You can drive a car not only in Thailand but also in Asian countries like Southeast Asia, basically. And you can use it. I tried to check into hotels; it's worked perfect. And you can use it also as a secondary ID other than your passport when you try to open a bank account. So there's really many programs for Singapore. There's this EP program that you can just find a company or pay yourself like a nice salary and then pay 17% tax, and in 1 year you can apply for their PR. Right, similar as there's the Japan one. In 1 year you can get a Japanese green card, right? But you have to like kind of put yourself under a certain Japanese company of your friends or yourself. And in 5 years, you can apply for the Japanese passport, which ranks number 2 among the world, being number 1 being Singapore. And for Korea, they used to have this $250,000 investment program. I think they recently raised it to a million or something. But similar to like Japan or Singapore, if you get the working visa there, the normal pace will take you like 5 years to get their permanent residency and also passport programs. So really try to see which options work for you, because a lot of the countries, when you turn your permanent residency into a passport, like Greece, right, you have to speak Greek. So consider like those requirements as well. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll close out one more question. I think we might have time for one question, maybe two. Fast forward to 2050. 2050, the vision for RNSID. What is, I think about this a lot for Build. It's kind of a different space for what we're doing. It's economic development, so it's real estate, it's ventures, it's small business. And, we think about a $10 billion real estate equity footprint that's actually shared between members. So if you're a member in one city, there's a third space or real estate footprint that you actually hold, and you have incentivized equity across the entire kind of global footprint. But these things are always kind of refining. RNS is definitely a pretty mature product. So 2050, we're out about 25 years now. What does it look like? What does RNS ID look like? And what does Palau look like as what changes for Palau, on that same trajectory?
Yeah, so for Palau, and let me talk about Palau first. I think by that time, our goal is to get them 100,000 people. So far we got 35,000, so we're about like 35% already. But if we're able to reach 100,000 people, then the number one, it can basically support a country, right? It no longer depends on U.S. Right now we depend on the compact fund from U.S. They just pay the Palau 80 million, and in exchange they take one of our island for the military. And yeah, so for Palau, I think this is a good, pretty first mover advantage, right? So they kind of like offer this residency program first, and then it gets to attract people there. So I think it's for Palau, is from that front, that's kind of a pretty advantage. And for RNS, like we're definitely thinking about expanding other identity solutions, like kind of the Thailand driver's license. And also, because when you move to a new place, right, it's not that easy, right? You need to get a driver's license, you need to get your local insurance, you need to know where, which hospital to go, you need to know, like, where to put your kids into school. So what we want, for our vision is just to make your guys kind of situated in that new location really, really well, right? So that's what we want to achieve. I mean, actually already, we hope to do so. But in 2050, when I'm 60 years old, I think this infrastructure would definitely be already like running by that point. So whenever you move to a new place, the first thing came to your mind is probably RNS, right? That's the location you go, and that's the center you go for your initial need, right? We're probably going to help you for, your first 3 months into a new location, and then you're on your own.
I think we may have time for one or two questions until the host kicks me out, but We do? Okay, great. Okay, one question. Yeah, I think there's a microphone here in the middle if you wanted to scoot on up here.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's very interesting. What you're doing is very interesting and cool. But I have a question. How compatible is your solution with the underlying legal infrastructure internationally? Because there are so many, if you go to X country, they want to screen you against sanctions or do KYC, they need to actually retain some of your data, right? Like maybe your gender, residency, they need to keep your copy of your passport. So with your solution, you're decreasing, like you're minimizing the data that is exposed or disclosed. But on the other hand, on another jurisdiction, it may not be compatible. So they may need much more data to let you in. So how is your solution compatible with this existing legal infrastructure?
That's actually a very good question. So to repeat that question, like it's okay, if you use like Palau institutions, right? But if you go to UAE or Europe, what if they require, like you to disclose everything? The answer is no solution, right? If Europe requires you to disclose that, then they require you to disclose that, right? But I think what you can do is for like, say, for example, for financial institutions, right? They say you need to do KYC, but what kind of detailed requirement in there? They didn't specify, right? They say you need to, know your customer, but they didn't say you cannot outsource, right? Once they say that you can outsource, I think that's where we came into place. That you can say like the sanctions was already checked by RNS, for example, right? And then for like other institutions, you just don't need to go and then show your ID here and there. You just do mint once, right? And you can check that Merkle root so that RNS as us, we cannot even change your information, right? We have your sanction, we have your PEP, we have your like fraud checks. So everything is, if it's true, then if the bank can choose to trust us to fulfill their KYC obligations. But if you go to, like if they say, for example, for hotel, for example, they say, oh, you would have to, the country requires. But we're trying to nudge, this in this direction as much as possible. For WorldCoin, Word ID, I think is too much. They say, oh, you just use your scan your eyes and then you can do everything. I think that's maybe like 20 years later. But for now, we're just trying to minimize like as much as we can. And then also we go to a lot of this identity weeks, identity kind of talks with other jurisdictions to try to minimize the requirement they need. They only need to prove you are not a criminal, right? Why know my age, right? So
the pursuit of global mobility, sovereign global mobility. With that, I think we're out of time. Will, how can we find you? Where do we need to go to check out RNSID?
You can go to rns.id and then reach out to customer support and tell them, you're my audience at a Parallel Society, and then they probably will help you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.